welcome back to Voice of Truth podcast with me here, Eleonora Grace Hart, and I have Johnny Comerford from Australia. He is back to our podcast channel, and I want to remind you that he was here before, and the title of our topic before was God is Not My Friend, and he wrote a book called Tarzan Loves Jane. And I asked him to come back, and I'm so honored to have him back here again. And I'm excited to ask more questions. And our topic today is about, real men standing up for themselves and not to be consumed by the worldly identities, but to speak up their voice. And we're going to go in details more about that because this is mainly for men's mental health. So without further ado, I just want to reintroduce again amazing man, Johnny Comerford. Welcome, Johnny.
Thank you, Eleonora. Appreciate it. And I'm happy to be here. Excited to be back. So thank you for having me back.
You're welcome. So let's start with, first of all, the journey after we had that first interview with you about the Start Over movement project that we had with Sir Marco Robinson, and now we're moving towards more about the mental health of men. And how was first of all, your book, The Tarzan Loves Jane? How's that working for you since we had that discussion about the mental health for men? How are you doing today?
Yeah, no, I'm doing great. Tarzan Loves Jane continues to do well. One of the things that I hoped for Tarzan Loves Jane would be that men who had experienced similar things that I went through, so sexual abuse as a child, would reach out and contact me, and they have been. And that's been really the best part for me. The most rewarding part is, men just, asking me for things that I've done to help my journey through mental health, which has led me to write another book called Battle Armor, which is just tools for men who suffered childhood abuse, things that I've used.
Yeah, amazing, because people being abused, when we can talk about your book project later on, but I want to expand more about the mental health for men because it will help a lot of younger men who can't speak for their voice, or even older men or men in their middle age, right? Like how would you help them, or even help them understand the situation they're going through without actually losing themselves, but actually start finding the light, that there are the light? Like, how did you do it yourself, like while you were writing the Tarzan Loves Jane? Because you were writing that, did you feel like it was part also of your healing journey?
100%. The 2.5 to 3 years that I spent writing Tarzan Love Jane was basically
Wow.
daily therapy for me.
Wow.
And especially writing the chapter where I was sexually assaulted. That took me a long time to write. And if I go back to where the first chapter or the first part that I wrote, and then when I look at how I finished it, it was, in the first time I wrote it, I sort of breezed over it. Where I've got a really good mentor. And she basically told me, you got to take yourself and you got to take the reader to places that you don't want to go. And when you do that and you write about the emotion, it'll come across in the book. So yeah, Sue Ellen, her name's Sue Ellen Dainty. She's an author. Yeah, she really pushed me on that book, and I'm so grateful that she did. It's a much better story because of that. So
yeah, that's great. And because the tricky part was the book was based on comedy, right?
yeah.
And then but it's actually based on your true life story. Like, your true life story is really traumatic, but you managed to, like, it's like a twist in the story. And that's the magic thing that like most people cannot even fathom or understand how you did that. So do you believe that writing story that is really one of the key to healing as well, or is
Yeah,
there other things too?
No. I think writing is the first part
Okay.
in healing. I think there's a couple of things for me that help with the healing process. One, you've got to find some courage. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so courage and conviction for me
Mm.
are the two keys to helping yourself through mental health and helping yourself through trauma, and journaling your thoughts. And that's how I got into writing. I started journaling as part of therapy, and then I
Yeah.
got into narrative therapy, which is about writing.
Yeah.
And I found, I'd write how I felt on a particular day. And then a week later, I would always go back and review the week.
Yeah.
And I'd see how I felt at the start of the week until I started on the new week. And I just
Huh.
saw that every week I was just getting a little bit better and better.
Yeah.
Where, after when I finished Tarzan Loves Jane, my mental health has never been better. And then, working on the next project, I just feel like I'm just going from strength to strength now. And that's
Nice.
just been verbalizing everything.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your next project, because now you have completed the Tarzan and Gem, and it's having great results. And you saw yourself, you have improved yourself, how you communicate, how you speak, and you becoming the voice for those people. So, what is this next project you want to share with us? Is it okay that you can share with us about this new project that you're working on?
Yeah, 100%. So, Battle Armor, it's 25 tools for men who are dealing with childhood abuse. And basically, they're just 25 tools that I've sort of picked up, or they're tools and discussion points for men
Mm-hmm.
that I went through therapy. I mean, I was in therapy on and off for 7 years,
Wow.
and when I look back at that journey to where I am now, there was things that worked for me and there's things that didn't work. And so what I did along the journey, if I found something, firstly, I made a promise to myself that I would try everything that my psychiatrist gave me to try to improve my
Mm.
mental health. So I made myself promise that I would try it.
Yeah.
And I tried things for a week. And then as I did them, I scored them from 1 to 10. And it's
Mm.
so simple. Right? And I just did a score between 1 out of 10. And then I just made comments about how they made me feel.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that week, I went back and reviewed the highest score one. So ocean swimming, I gave 10 out of 10. So I try and get in the ocean every day. Um,
Wow.
and then like things that I never thought I'd do, like affirmations. I just could never see myself doing affirmations, but now I do affirmations every day.
Yeah.
So yeah, little things like that, because one of the thing that sticks in my mind is, as we discussed last time, I didn't tell anyone what happened to me for 42 years.
I
So,
bet.
yeah, and I internalized everything myself, and
Mm.
I put all that pressure on. But one of the best things that someone's ever told me was when my first psychiatrist told me the reason that I am who I am is because of what happened to me when I was a child, when I was 11. And
Mhm.
because when you get sexually assaulted or you go through
Yeah.
trauma as an early age, your brain doesn't form correctly.
No.
And, what she outlined for me was what I went through in my life, relationship breakdowns. Most people get into a role that like helps the community. I was in the army. So there's a set of guidelines that everyone who goes through childhood trauma all have. And what you realize, where I thought I was the only one who ever went through what I went through, but what it turns out is we all go through the exactly same thing. So
Really?
we don't talk about it though. We all
No.
keep it to ourselves. So it's really important, and that's one of the things I love about your podcast is about having the voice, that voice
Mhm.
of truth. And it's really important for men to stand up and say, hey, I went through this as well. I
Mhm.
know exactly what you're going through because I went through exactly the same things. These things here really help me. And I believe if you try them, they'll help you as well. And that's the mission of the book for me. So Tarzan Loves Jane was for me. I wrote it
Yeah.
to help improve my mental health. And, now I just want to have something that, if people are looking for things to help them, that have been tried by someone who's gone through exactly what they've gone through, and
Yeah.
it's worked for them. Not everything's going to work for everyone, but there's
Yeah.
enough things in there. If you
Yeah.
can pick, 5 out of the 25 that you can implement, um, you know, you'll get better mental health, because some of them you have to, like basic stuff, exercise, alcohol consumption, like all there's things in there that everyone knows if you do those, you're going to naturally feel better anyway.
Yeah.
But I've just sort of, put that into the category of people, who are trying to deal with childhood abuse or childhood trauma more.
Yeah, because childhood trauma is really cutting deeper, right? Like that's, and as you well know, the society has taught men to suppress themselves. Like, oh, men don't cry in
Mm.
order to be men. Oh, you have to suppress yourself. Don't talk about emotions. Emotion is weakness. Stuff like that. So I believe for myself, because I have sons too, and and in order for me to break the cycle, I have to really raise my son to express themselves, that it's just normal. At the same time, it's okay to cry. It's okay to do to express those emotions, discuss about it. But what if the child, like you went through, like as growing up, and now you become a man, and like you said, it's been it's hard to talk about it, but how do you find the trust? That's the thing I'm looking for, is how do you find the trust of that, to voice out your own voice, that you are safe out there to talk about this? How do you even find that trust within yourself? How did you find your trust within yourself, John?
So for me, it was about anger. Um,
Oh.
so I found out that the teacher that raped me was moved when I first came out about this. So 7 years ago, I then, like probably a week after I told the doctor, he was the first person I ever told, and I went
Mhm.
through that process, and it sort of opened up all the old wounds, as you can imagine. So I searched the person's name and found out the real
Wow.
story was he was caught raping and abusing children at a school, and then he was moved to the school that I went to.
Yeah.
When I found out that he was moved to that school, I just had anger. I was angry, and it was 42 years of anger, right? So
Yeah.
all that pent up anger, um, and because I was so angry, it gave me that. When we spoke about courage and conviction,
Yeah.
it gave me the courage to speak out. But then as I said on the last podcast, then a week after that, I had a newspaper article, in Sydney, went
Wow.
Australia wide, and it was the most read article on the internet that
Yeah.
online. So, I mean, on the journey to do that interview, I was ringing my father to tell him what had happened to me at 11.
Wow.
That's how raw it was when I did that.
Wow.
Um, but the flip side of that was, but then, I had all these people trying to reach out to me then, but I just wasn't ready. I wasn't emotionally available to them to take on their story because I hadn't dealt with my own,
Yeah.
and it's typical of a survivor of anything. You want to jump out and help and, be heard, because I was angry and I wanted everyone to know that this was going on at that school, and give a voice to everyone else who was, went through the same thing at that school.
Yeah.
But I wasn't ready mentally or emotionally to be able to help those people. So then I went on that journey to
Yeah.
recover for myself.
Mm.
Um, and as we know from the last podcast, I was lucky enough. I found someone who gave me that strength and believed in me, to hold my hand and stand beside me and say, doesn't matter what you say or what you do or what you want to do, I'm here right beside you. I'll stand by you. I'll support you, because this is
Mhm.
it's important for you, and it's important for other men to hear what you're saying, because we need to stand together. Because as I said before, we all go through the same things.
Yeah.
And the more that we talk about it, and the more that we sort of get together as a group and stand together, the more
Exactly.
comfortable men will be able to take that step. And it doesn't matter if you've been a victim of childhood abuse. If you've got mental health struggles, there's, talking to men who have been through, some serious and some dark times and have come through the other end. They're the people that you want to be talking to. because they have made it and they've done things to help them. And
Yeah.
we didn't do. I didn't. My survival right now, it wasn't on chance. Wasn't by chance. It's not. But I'm alive not by chance. I'm alive because I had to do things to save my life. And and I picked things that were pretty simple, to be honest.
Mhm.
So I exercise. I swim in the ocean. I do an affirmation. I do some grounding. I make sure every morning I sit down, have a coffee, talk to people. I have a cold shower, and there's 6 things that mentally make you feel better within the first 2 hours of my day. And you can't help but feel good when you do those things. So
Exactly. Like you are so right. And when you mention anger, your example is really powerful because you use anger as a you launch yourself instead of in a negative way. You used anger in a positive way by voicing out yourself. Now you went to the newspaper and without being feeling ready, you just trusted the unknown that wherever this gonna lead me to, I'm just gonna share your voice. You which you did. You shared your voice, and here you are. And there's it just shows that you can actually use anger in a positive way. It doesn't always have to be negative, because this is something about that I also want to point out with men is that some because the world has taught us men and women that anger is always negative. It isn't. It's an expression of something that we need to work on, but we can use it in a positive way. And the great example is what you just did in your story, and you use it for good to launch your story. And look what people are doing now. They're reaching out to you, and and you're contributing back to the society. You're giving back, and that is that to me that's called you are a change. You are a chain breaker.
thank you.
Yeah. And from that, so with this project that you are having now, you are like expanding yourself as a not only as a warrior or a hero to your own life, but showing men that they can do this too. That how to normalize that in this world that designed to confuse people. How what are the encouragement or advice would you give those men who are watching you right now that they too can do this?
Yeah, because it's easy. The biggest, and I go back to courage all the time. You've just got to commit. I just had to commit to something
Mm,
because if I just knew if I didn't, then I would be do something very horrible to myself. And I've tried that before, and I just realized that I've just for basically 41 years of my life, I just held on to something for so long that I just it was killing me, and I had to get rid of it, and I'd had enough.
mm,
So I found the courage, and I'm talking about courage a lot because in my story, when I was raped at 11, I joined the military. When I was 18, I took a gun to that school to kill that teacher that raped me. So I had
wow.
enough courage to take a loaded shotgun to the school, and I was going to kill him. There's no doubt what in my mind what I was going to do.
Yeah.
But I was told that he had already died that day.
Oh.
But I had the courage to do that. But when I went back home to my parents, and I walked in the door, I talked to my mum and dad like nothing had ever happened. But I didn't have the courage then to tell
Yeah.
them what I was about to do. So you got to find the courage and that anger. Your point on anger. One of the things I love the most in the tools that I do, and that's in the first 5 tools, is yelling. So
Mm,
when I went into the military, on the day one when I was there, like minute one, day one, they teach you to yell. We've been told
yeah.
our whole lives to be quiet.
Yeah.
Be quiet. Since we're all children, but yelling is so good, and I do it every day.
It is.
Just yelling, even it's underwater into a pillow, the release that you just get from yelling, and it just gets all that anger out. It's really cathartic. And even when I ride a motorbike, and then when I'm out riding through the middle of the national park, I scream my lungs out. Because there's no one around, and because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel relaxed. So
Yeah.
the tools that I'm talking about in this book, they're not something that you've got to go and book a room for. You know what I mean? You can walk into your room, lay on your pillow, pull it up out of your head, and scream as loud as you want, because no one's going to hear you. And
No.
then all of a sudden, you feel better for that. So that's one of the things that I wanted, because that's what I needed in my life. I needed tools that were easy to use. You can do them anywhere. And there's tools that are going to make you feel good, because they just do. And
Yeah.
that's as simple as that. So my advice to men is, like, don't overcomplicate getting help. Um,
Mm.
yes, go and see a healthcare professional for sure, because, and as what I say in the book with this battle armor, courage and conviction is like the iron that you need to build your armor, and
Mm-hmm.
professional help is like your blacksmith. They help hammer away at your armor, make sure that you've got something that that will protect you, and then
Yeah.
you just learn the skills that make you feel good.
Yeah.
I was shocked at some of them, how easy they made me feel. Just breathing. My sister's a breath coach. She did some
Yeah.
breath with me, and it just made me feel good. Like,
Yeah.
it's so simple, and there's no excuse. That's what I say in the book. There's no excuse for
That's
this.
right. I love it. I love it because it's like teaching the man to center themselves, that you do have a heart too. So you need to connect with your heart, not just always with the mind, because the world society taught man just this is the most important thing. Then you end up forgetting to feel good, that it's okay to feel good, it's okay to feel the peace, it's okay to feel the calm, it's okay to feel that, to express those anger and feeling and scream and yell. And because I yell in my car too and saying fuck you, it's like and it feels so good, like to just
Yeah,
yell it out. And I just close the window, and sometimes I put down the window and just yell. And you're right, yelling, because my kids are in, when they were in their cadets, army and navy, I mean air and navy cadets, they teach them how to yell and all that stuff. Doesn't mean it's abuse and all that stuff. You know how this goes. And
yeah,
yeah, it's an expression. Like, it also builds confidence, and like you're trusting. It's all about trusting yourself. Whether who cares what people think, you just you know let it out, right?
yeah. And that's a really good point too. And I talk about that in the book. Is one of the things that and I say this with 100% honesty, I do not care what people think of what I'm doing or what's
Mm,
happened to me or what, of my life right now. And that's one of the key takeaways. You can't, if you're going to worry what everyone's going to think of you, you're never going to get better. It's
exactly.
it's really important that you worry about yourself,
Yeah.
um, and just the people who love you. That's
Mm.
all that matter.
I mean, you're so right. It's the people that love you that also not you not to just share with anybody who's not equipped enough to actually handle your shadow story or your darkness, but also be mindful who you share it with. And that's my experience too. And things that I tell my male client, like, you need to be also mindful who you share your story with, because some people are not trustful, can be trusted, right? Like, not everyone that smile can be trusted. You know what I mean? So with men, it's like, this is really an important thing that you are doing, because it opens doors to a lot of many topic about men's mental health. And because there's so many women's mental health out there, many women's networking event, and then we don't find enough men gathering together it's just very few, gathering together as networking together and just talk about men stuff. And would you be considering that yourself one day, to talk about not just the seriousness, and then maybe go towards joy, laughter, and diversify however you wanna expand the mental health as well? Because I think for me, having joy added into the mental health, I think it's a great thing.
Yeah. And you're right. And one of the chapters in the book for Battle Armor is laughter. And I write, the first paragraph I write in there that some people might find it strange that I'm putting laughter in for a book to help people who are struggling with, childhood abuse. But it's so important that we laugh, and the old saying is laughter is the best medicine. I mean,
Mhm.
laughter makes us feel good. So, you're absolutely right. Laughter is a main agreement. And that's one of the things, as you said before, about Tarzan Loves Jane.
Mhm.
I want to be able to, highlight the darkness of, what happened to me, which is in the book.
Yeah.
But, one of the things that, and I've lived my life like this, is, for me to overcompensate that, I've always made light of everything else. Because, I was carrying darkness inside me. And for me growing up, I grew up in a big house that had 5 children, and, your parents sort of knew if you were off a little bit. So
Yeah.
instead of being asked what's wrong all the time,
Yeah.
until the point where because, I didn't want to talk about what happened to me then, I made up for it by being funny or trying to be funny. And that was just an overcompensation. But and I wanted to make sure that I'd captured that in
Yeah.
Tarzan Jane as well, because in that book, the main character Johnny, like, everything's a throwaway line, everything's a joke, until it's not, until he has to face,
Yeah.
he's really got to face his demons, and he's got to deal with it, and he's got to move on from it. And that's what that's what that book's all about. It's
Yeah.
about
It's beautiful.
actually, you're never going to get better unless you actually deal with your problem, and you've got
Yeah.
to deal with it. And to deal with it, you need a really good support network, and that's
Mm.
the character of Amber in the book, who, you know, um, that helped Johnny get through that. And she forced Johnny to get help,
With love.
with love.
With love.
It's me or help.
Yeah. With love, and you added laughter to it. Like that's a perfect recipe, like love and laughter, and you created life out of your story. And it's a beautiful testimony in your life, and definitely your walking your talk. And that's one thing I love about your story. It's just very intriguing every time you created a new project, like what's next for John. So yeah. So what is the exciting thing that you are planning to do after the project that you are doing? I know you have one more, right?
I have one more, yeah. So for my mental health and just around the childhood abuse stuff, Tarzan Loves Jane I wrote it for myself, and I wrote it as a gift for Amber,
Mm.
because, I never could have got through my life without her. And, I wanted to recognize that, and I wanted to show her how much that meant to me. So, but
Nice.
but personally, Tarzan Loves Jane was just, for me, therapy to help me finally, put the demons to rest and move forward in my life. But one of the things that I found when Tarzan Loves Jane came out was the amount, and even today I get, messages from men every day, just saying, how about that journey that, and not just their men, but their partners, reaching out as
Exactly.
well. My partner went through something similar. Is there something that you'd recommend, or, what else did you do to help with your mental health? And
Yeah.
so Battle Armor is that. So Tarzan Loves Jane was for me. Battle Armor is for anyone who needs help, because I want to be able to help other people. I'm really passionate about that, and I just feel like that what happened to me at age 11 is now taking me to a point where I sort of feel like this is what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to help other men get
Mm.
through some trauma or going through something bad in their life.
Yeah.
So for me, the final chapter then is just to make the public aware of what really happened. And so I'm looking at doing a screenplay or a book. I
Mm.
haven't sort of worked out what I'm going to do yet, just around the Royal Commission. So Australia did a Royal Commission into childhood abuse in institutions.
Nice.
And they covered a number of institutions, but
Yeah.
what story I'm going to focus on is the Catholic Church, because
Yeah.
that's what I was involved in.
Yeah.
And then, but that's a real story. So that'll be just about my journey through that, and I've reached out to some other people who have been through that. I'm really lucky that I had a group that helped me called Samson, and they've done some amazing work and did some amazing work through the Royal Commission. So I've got people I can reach out to talk about just 4 or 5 different people's journey through that time in Australia, because 2027, it's the 10-year anniversary of the release of the final report. So I
Yeah.
want to have something in place by then, and just to show Australia and the world, what men and women went through. But the biggest shock that came out of that was they weren't expecting the number of men to come forward.
Wow.
And I think it was around 67%.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a bit of a shock to everyone going through it, and in an indirect way, it started my journey, because in 2012, when the Prime Minister of Australia then, Julia Gillard, announced that she was doing that,
Yeah.
I can still see that in my memory, clear as day. Her standing at that podium saying that she's commissioning this Royal Commission into that, and it was about 4 years after my mum passed, who asked me when she was dying what happened to me as a child. So, it was these little series of things happening in my life from 2008 when my mum died, or 2009, sorry, to 2012. That happened, and then once it was in the news, it was in the news.
Mm-hmm.
There was some stories around one of the Cardinal Pell. That was a big story here about what he did and his court trials, and it was just in the news for a long period of time. But it's something that we shouldn't forget. So I think so just summarizing that, my own story, helping others, and then making sure that the public are aware that there's a lot of men and women who are still dealing with the effects of that Royal Commission.
I think it is important, apart from, because right now I'm thinking about the Remembrance Day. Is actually, this can be also be part of the remembrance, kind of in a
Yeah,
different topic, like Remembrance Day, like, or remember what happened. Remember to, with all these individuals have different stories, but the same pain, the same lessons, and they all goes that they went through. And that this just shows the institution that training people, or men, or especially men in the military system or in the Catholic system, the institution, like it's hard for men who goes through that to unlearn what they've been taught, and you went through that. It takes courage, energy, time, and focus to unlearn those things as you go through your healing process. And to the point, you really have to really, like, really feel breaking your heart, right, in order to heal your soul. And
yeah,
healing that, and it took you years, 40 something years, to get where you are. And for some people, they may never heal, right?
yeah,
And that's just the truth. It hurts. And for others, they do heal. Like, you are healing, you are setting example as well. And bringing that voice is, it take a strong man just like you to bring it out and turn it into a book, and another book of self-help book. And I really thank you for contributing to the world, to the men. I think we need to really expand this more in a global sense, and I will do my best as well to help you support that. And yeah, so what is your final word for our audience here? And especially teenagers out there, like, what can they do different, so that in order to stop this, that they too can have the courage like you did?
yeah. My one piece of advice is, if you're in a dark, if someone's watching this right now and you're in a dark place, you just need to take, again, I talk about courage because it's so important. Just go to someone that you know loves you and tell them. Because as soon as you tell someone that loves you what you're going through, you know, it just lightens the load just that little bit, you know, and then someone's going to, and if they love you, they're going to support you and help you. And then, you know, then the next journey, then you've got someone standing next to you to take you to that next journey. You know, if it's someone, a teenager, and it's someone young, and they can go to their parents or a guardian or, you know, an adult that they know will help them regardless of that. You know, find that person. And then, because every conversation after that is a little bit easier. You know, it's, and I think I said this last time we were talking. It's easy for me to sit here. People look at me and go, "Oh, wow, like, you know, John looks really well. He looks like he's, you know, his mental health's really good." You know, I've been at the depths, the
I
deep of
bet.
the deep of the deep of
I bet.
depression.
Yeah.
You know, where, you know, I just remember laying in my bed and just feeling like I was on an elastic band, just sinking, 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 just
Wow.
down into the depths of the earth. That's how
Yeah.
deep and dark the places that I've come from. And I just
Mm.
remember the first time I told the doctor about what happened to me, you know, I cried. I just, you know,
Yeah.
40 years of emotion and just this outpouring of crying. But every time I told someone about it or had a conversation around it as part of therapy, it got better and better and better and better. But after writing Tarzan Loves Jane, after finishing this book, Battle Armor to Help Men, you know, now, you know, I feel like I'm the front and center of the army about to help men to go and fight this for you.
Mm.
So, you know, if you've got someone that you love, please go and talk to them straight away. Because the longer you leave it, the more you'll build it up in your mind and make it more difficult for yourself. So take, you know, if you're listening now, take 3 deep breaths, just get up, go and tell someone what's happening. And if you haven't got anyone that you can talk to, just find a lifeline or a helpline in whatever country that you're in, and just call that line. Someone will answer. There's some great teenage lifelines around the world, and there's people on that other end that can help you, who are qualified to help you, and most of them have been through the same struggles that you're going through. But you got to lighten your load. Like, you've really got to lighten that load for yourself by telling someone. It's really important. It's the first step, and I talk about it in Battle Armor. The first thing you need to do is find some courage and get someone to help you. It's so important.
And I want to ask you too, before we end this episode, what would you say to, like, for example, men like you who have partners? What would you say to their partner, to the women who have partners like the way you went through? What would you say to them in order to help their partner heal forward?
That's a really good question. Patience, um,
Mm,
you know, and I think the thing I love about Amber the most is she's got a really good, not bullshit detector, but she'll tell me how it is.
mm,
If I'm feeling a certain way, or if I say something, you know, she'll look at me and go, "No, I don't think that. Maybe, you know, let's talk about this."
yeah,
You know, she won't agree. Amber won't agree with me for the sake of agreeing with me to make me feel better. You know, she'll challenge what I'm saying
that's
in a
a good.
good way, and that's,
Yeah,
I mean, I love it.
yeah,
And I remember, you know, just writing Tarzan Loves Jane, and even, you know, writing Battle Armor, I'd turn to Amber and go, "Hey, how's this sound?" And Amber would look at me and go, "No, keep going." Yeah, you know what I mean. And then, like, so she's not the sort of person go, "Oh, that's so good, John." You know, and she
yeah.
pushes me to be a better person, and
Mm,
she supports me no matter what. And even if supporting me is just not saying anything, you know. But you know, you got to, and it's got to have honesty is something that you really got to have as well. And I talk about honesty in the book as well, because
mm,
unfortunately, victims of childhood abuse are great liars. You know, I'm
mm,
a great liar because I've been lying pretty much my whole life,
mm,
uh, to myself and to everyone around me. You know, because the biggest questions I don't know how many times in my life I've been asked, "Are you okay?" And I've
That's a
said,
good, yeah,
yes, like a million times. You
yeah.
know, I had people ask me enough for me to turn around and go, you know what, I'm not. And when I was working in mining in a remote town, I actually had a boss ring me once, or I think she ended up texting me and saying, "Are you okay?" And I just text back. I don't even know why I did it. I just went, "Not really." And she came
Mm,
to my house to check on me. So
nice.
she saw something in that, and she helped me through a time period, and I'll always be grateful for that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think just listen to. I mean, just be supportive. Um,
Mm,
and just make sure that people are getting help. It's really important that we make sure that we continually talk to someone. So I've got someone that, if I need to, I can make an appointment, go and see, and, just recalibrate every now and then. But, I've just found the things that work for me, and I just make sure, as I said before, I commit to those every single day. I don't do all of them every day. I might do, but I always make sure I do a minimum of 3.
nice.
And it's, pretty simple. But yeah, just be supportive. And if you're unsure, maybe do some research. It's,
Yeah.
a lot of research around signs, symptoms, behaviors. And as I said before, we all behave the same because that's just the way the brain works.
Yeah.
Um, and on the website, tarzanlovesjane.com.au, there's you can reach out. So if anyone wants to reach out, I'm more than happy to talk to anyone about what I think. But yeah, just be supportive.
Yeah, that's great. Like for relationship, right? For in order for the partner relationship together to grow together while they're going through this healing journey, be supportive, listen well, and you know appreciate each other, of course. And that's how you really heal forward. And would you say the same thing to those people outside the relationship, like the relatives, friends? Would you say the same kind of advice too?
Yeah, one of the things that I found is, some people sort of go, "Oh, I just can't imagine that happening."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they don't mean it in a bad way.
Mhm.
But like, I find it funny that, you know, people think that, one, they don't understand. I suppose they just got to try and understand, and they've probably got to educate themselves a little bit. Try not to make comments without educating yourself, because I mean, as I said before, like, I'm in a place in my life where I really don't care what people say, but
Yeah.
I think education's the key, because, you know, I had a friend that went to the same school that I went with. He sat next to me during that whole time I went to that school, and nothing bad ever happened to him. So,
Mm.
what I mean? Like, so you just because you went somewhere and you might have got through okay, it doesn't mean the person next to you got through okay. And that's
Mm.
life too. That's in
Yeah.
workplaces, sporting teams. Like, it's everyone sort of, even though you're in the same place, you have a different life. And I
Exactly.
actually saw a really good psychiatrist say that, there was a question about, you know, so I've got 3 brothers, so we all grew up in the same house. Why
Mm-hmm.
are our lives different? And even though you've got 4 people who grew up in the same house, we all came in a different part. So the one's the eldest, and there was no other kids, and so he copped the most, and I'm the youngest boy, so I copped the least. So we all had different experiences. So you can't pigeonhole people, because even if they grew up in the same house with the same family, they had a different experience than their siblings did.
A
And I
good
think that's
one.
really important when you think about this sort of stuff.
I like that analogy, because when I was writing my book too, the Code of I Am, and I went through the grief, losing my son. And one thing I learned is when people outside your family circle and want to support you, but at the same time, not all support is good, because sometimes people impose their own fear onto you in order for them to feel safe for themselves. Nothing to do with you anymore, it's about them. And that's when I realized, like, interesting. So I start educating people, and you're right, Johnny. Like, it's all about educating others as well, how you receiving those support, like whether support actually help or it does more harm, right? And everybody is, yes, different, have different story, different life, but at the same time, through education we can teach people like how to even support people who are going through tough time and healing journey, how to be more mindful of the words they're gonna share or wisdom or support they're gonna give, that making sure they don't impose their fear onto the person who's going through tough time, but instead, if they don't even know what to say, at least try to apply understanding, or just go out, take them out for dinner, or just offer a hug, as simple as that, without imposing your own fear for your own safety, like, but just understanding, to me, is the most beautiful support. Is just sometimes shut the fuck up, you know
And
you
you're
know
absolutely right. I mean, that's the perfect answer for it, to be honest, because I would prefer someone to come to me, and I've had someone come to me and go, I have no idea what you
hmm
went through. I have no idea what to say.
hmm
I don't know what to say to you, because I just can't imagine it myself. But I
yeah,
just want to let you know I'm here for you. And if you want to talk, I'm here to talk, and I'm here to support you. And
that's
that I just, and then we hugged, and I was just like, I couldn't ask for anything else. So
yeah.
thank you.
And that's when you become more open to receive their help, because they're not judging you anymore,
Yeah.
yeah. So
No,
it's a
so-
lot of education to learn about these things, right? Like, it's about give and take, and it's not just about you going through tough time. It's also about whether the person who's helping you is safe enough to share them your story, your dark moments, when you're so vulnerable, so you don't get hurt again.
Yeah, 100%, because that's the problem, right? Once people find the courage, use their voice, you're on edge, because
Mhm.
how everyone's going to cope and relate to that. You hope that people are going to support it, but not everyone's
Not everyone.
get it, and I think that's important too. And I think that's one of the reasons why I really bought into. I made a commitment to myself to say,
That's good.
you got to own it. You
Mhm.
are owning it. So people are going to make judgment on you, and you can't let that get in the way of the vision of what you want to do. So
That's
you've
right.
just got to, especially with social media, and like, we all know it. And that's the problem that the our children are having now. This abuse that people
Yeah.
cop on social media. I'll read a comment and I'll read it to Amber, and I'll go, and Amber will take my phone. You're not replying. You're
I
not
love
allowed.
Amber.
You're not allowed. You know the rules. You're not allowed to reply. You just got to let it
She is your earth angel, by the way.
go. Because that'll come back and bite you. You know it. You
Yeah.
just got to be bigger, and that's
Yeah.
what I try to do now. Like, I read them to Amber, get it off my chest, and move on.
Yeah. Amazing. Maybe one day you should also speak about um, how to attract a, the right partner in your life while you're going through shit.
I was just lucky.
No, you're more than lucky.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm very very honored to know you, to have known you, and I hope one day I'll meet Amber. And I think we she needs to speak in this podcast too with you next time. How about that?
Yeah, I'd love it. And we're only talking about this the other day because we had someone reach out to her wanting to talk to her about that journey, because she did play such a big role
She did, yeah.
in that book. I mean, she's the main character, right?
Hmm.
And yeah, because someone had read that book, and they said to me, "Oh, do you get much feedback about Amber's character?" And I said that's the only character anyone ever talks to me about.
Oh,
They sort of say, how good is Amber? How's Amber? Like, it was all about Amber. And then we're talking about that. She goes, "Oh, do you think Amber would talk about that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, she would, of course
she
she would."
will.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
do it next time. We'll be a couple
Yeah, that's.
relationship advice to people.
I don't know if we're that good, but
Yeah, I bet she'll be on that. But I would love to hear her and meet her even online and one day in person for sure. Because I think you're right, and to me, how I look at it, you setting an example for men, how you also recognize and acknowledge your partner, Amber. To me, that's beautiful. That is an example of an amazing couple. Like working together through tough times at the same time, acknowledging each other, appreciating each other, and you both it's not 50-50. It's more like 100-100, and you complement each other, your essence. And that, to me, that's really beautiful. Yeah, and it's really worthy. I mean, it's worth to mention that and recognize that and acknowledge it.
oh yeah, I'm extremely grateful Amber's in my life. So
Yeah.
100%, she's a
Well,
very good woman.
yeah. So John, tell people where to reach your book and your next one.
Yep. So if you go to www.tarzanlovesjane.com.au, that's got everything on Tarzan Loves Jane. The next book, Battle Armor, it won't be released until the 1st of July. It'll go on pre-sale 1st of June.
Mm.
But if anyone who's interested, just reach out on Tarzan Loves Jane, because I'm going to set up a website as part of that book where people can go to. We'll have videos on how to breathe properly. So it's going to turn into something else, away from writing, and just have something men can go to and just read about what's in the book as well, have the chapters. So but yeah, it'll be on pre-sale on the 1st of June.
Awesome, perfect, amazing. Thank you once again, and those who have listening to this or watching this. Yeah, reach out to John, and there's so much interesting, and not only interesting but also helping the humanity in this world, making a difference. And it's more than just a book; it's making a difference in the humanity. So thank you, John, and I look forward for the next one, perhaps with Amber.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks again for your support, Eleonora. I really appreciate everything you've done to help me. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. So thank you, everybody, and see you next time. Bye bye.
See you later. Bye.